G'day, community, and welcome to the Jock Reynolds Supercoach podcast. It is the 6th of the 3rd we're recording this, so if anything changes in the news between now and when you hear it, uh, not our fault. I'm Lekdog. I'm joined today by the two hosts who can boast the most roast. The first is Patch. How are you?
I'm good, Lekdog. How are you, my beautiful friend?
I am present. Damo, how are you?
I'm not too bad. I'm not too bad. I'm getting excited. Round one's not that far away, and the practice matches are over, so we've got all the information that we need. Some
Wow.
people are overreacting, some people are underreacting, some people are reacting the perfect amount, and I guess we will discuss that now.
I don't know if we have all the information we need. We certainly have all the information we're going to get. So I would argue I need more. Patch, what's your the first thing that comes to mind post practice matches with 2 weeks or 10 days or whatever it is until the first game?
No thoughts, only mid-prices.
Yes.
There's not a lot of thinking going on. It's just kind of like, oh, yeah, let's just play around and see how they fit, see how they fit. There's not a lot of panicking going on because I know that kind of all the playing around I'm doing isn't going to result in a final team at the minute. But the thoughts I had during last week's mailbag, which I recommend you go check that out because um, Clarky and Dame are very smart, and I was also there. Um, yeah, that's kind of been swirling around, and the gist of it for those that haven't listened is that we've got more trades, so we have more opportunity to turn mid prices into premiums to get more points on the board, and I'm just kind of playing in that space a little bit. And as we've kind of spoken about, this is as good a year for mid prices as I think we've ever seen playing Supercoach. So I don't know, the possibilities are real. There are lots of them, lots of possibilities, and lots of teams that you can put together and look at it and go, yeah, I can see how that works. So that's really fun.
The we've got a whole rainbow of mid prices, right? We've got the veterans returning from injury. We've got the borderline guys who were traded, and then we've got the guys who look like they might fill some voids of significance with players moving out of their side. There's really, I think that's the difference, is that you can see clear roles with a lot of these mid prices, and this is the talking point, right? We can go guns and rookies, we can go mid-price madness, we can go a mix, but it's the mid prices that I think are going to make or break the season. Damo, I know we have plenty of mid prices, but are we comfortable taking risks on them because we know that there's also quite a bit of cash gen in some positions?
I guess you got to look at the mid prices and decide, is there upside in them at their price? And you look at someone like a Jacob Hopper, and this is a guy that at his best can average you mid 90s, and he's coming in priced at 332K. So history would suggest that he can outperform his price. And then you're looking at someone like Finn Callahan, who has played a few games in his first season. He looked okay. He's coming in at an elevated price now. He's out of the rookie price now, but he's still kind of cheap. Looks like he's going to have a role after the departure of Hopper and Taranto and all the players that left the Giants. And now there appears to be a clear upside at his price, even though he is slightly elevated at 244K. He's not going to average you 110, but you sort of got to look at the risks with all of the mid prices and decide if there is actual upside at their price. And a lot of the ones that people are jumping on have a clear upside. It's just about selling it to yourself more than more than anything else, and not destroying your team to fit them all in unless your name is Patch.
Hello. I think it also goes back to what MJ was talking about in the mailbag a few weeks ago of like, if you're bringing a guy in, especially if it's a mid price, know what you want out of them. If you're like, I'm going to ride them until the buys and then trade them up, or like, I'm going to, keep Darcy Cameron and then have him as an F7, R3 swing, or like just like have a role for each of these players. Don't pick someone of like, oh, Errol Gordon scored 188. I got to fit him in. I got to fit him in. You got to think, what are you picking Errol Gordon for? Do you think he'll be a top 8 midfielder? You know, they're missing Luke Parker on the weekend. Does he keep getting those CBAs? Does he keep escaping scrutiny from opposition sides? He's the sort of player that you can shut down. You've kind of got to look at it critically and just kind of say, oh, you know, if I'm picking Errol Gordon or am I picking Will Day, Finn Callahan, whatever it is, whoever it is, just think, all right, I'm picking them for this purpose. Once they've fulfilled that purpose, am I moving them on? Are they, you know, staying for the whole year? If they're staying for the whole year, you know, does it stack up? So just kind of, you know, don't get caught up in that preseason hype. Just despite it being, it's so much fun. I want to get caught up in it. Let me get caught up in it. But yeah, just kind of think about it before you really start riding those highs.
Just for clarity, you said Luke Parker missed. It was Callum Mills that missed. I know
sorry.
we'll get comments. Please direct them to Patch.
Thank you.
Thank God you're a journalist and you don't work in a maternity ward where all the babies are bald and look the same.
I mean, most AFL footballers are bald and look the same, so...
I don't know about most being bald, but they are mostly white dudes. They could all do podcasts, that's for sure. Let's talk about how our teams might have shifted after these practice matches. Those who listen to the podcast know I've only actually had 2 teams to date. I had a team I made in December, and I had a team I made in February, and now I have a third team that I've made in March. And personally, the changes I made haven't been all that wholesale. So I'll just quickly go through them. We can dissect a couple of the reasons a couple of these players I'd like to talk about. So for me, I went from having Nick Dacos in my defence at my D2, and now I have Elliot Yeo. And the reason I did that, I went Dacos and Parrish to Taranto and Hopper, Taranto and Ward. So, not Ward, Worpel. Sorry, I'm having a stroke. Taranto and Worpel. So basically, I just shifted my defenders into the forward line.
Yeah,
Why? Because I wanted to.
Was that because there was another rookie that popped up in defence you wanted to take advantage of? Was that because you saw Nick Dacos get tagged and went, oh no, I can't have any of that? What was it like? Was it a jumping off Dacos or jumping on Taranto, or just for the way people are trying to understand that thought process?
Yeah, so I went Dacos and Parrish, who both got tagged and didn't play well on the weekend, and I ended up bringing in, as I said, Worpel, Taranto, and actually Dylan Moore as well. So I bought in 2 primos and shifted some money around and bought in that other mid-pricer. The reason being is more for the upside of the guys I bought in than the potential downside of the guys I sent out. I haven't been sold on who are going to be the premium top upper echelon defenders this year, and I had Dacos as a relatively safe bet. As we discussed off air, Patch, even if he gets tagged every 4 weeks, that's enough reason for me to not want to pick him. When I look at a guy like Tim Taranto, who I think at the same price, $600 difference, I don't think Tim Taranto's going to get tagged, and if he does, I think he can handle it a lot better in a Richmond system. So I just moved Dacos to the forward line, and his name changed to Taranto. Dropping Parrish down and bringing in a Dylan Moore, who was in my December team. The reason for that was a few more cheaper players in the midfield put their hands up. I needed to make room for them. Those players being Finn Callahan, Cam McKenzie, Oscar Baker, that ilk of player. So basically for me, I just had to shift the money I was spending around to fit the rookies in. And as we always talk about, rookies dictate structure.
Yeah. Damo, you've been keeping a reasonably close eye on the rookies. Do you want to talk us through some of the players you think are must-haves? Because obviously that's kind of, you know, a few more have put their hand up over the weekend and a few more have kind of dropped off a bit. I feel like it's a good time to segue into talking about that briefly before we go back to what changes you've made to your side.
I think Fergus Green is probably someone that we can at least lock into our forward bench. He's going to be a pretty big focal point for the Hawks. He won't kick 3 goals from a low number of disposals every single week because Hawthorn probably aren't going to be that sort of team, but he's someone who's going to get games early and will probably roam up the ground every now and then and get some midfield minutes, kind of like the role Dylan Moore was playing last year with a little bit more of key position about him. Big watch on Edward Allen now with Pat Lipinski out until the middle of the year with a shoulder issue. He only played a few minutes of the match simulation, so didn't appear in the practice match, but he's one to look out for. He's one that Collingwood are really big fans of. If we look at some of the other games, if you look at players like, sorry, just bringing up a list here, Ruben Jinby played really well for West Coast off the halfback flank. He picked up a large number of disposals in and cracked the ton in just over half of the amount of game time. So he looks like someone that West Coast are really going to use in the upcoming season. Darcy Wilmot appears to be locked into that Brisbane wing. Even though he didn't get a big score, Will Phillips has the role at North Melbourne, and I don't think people should panic about what was produced by him. He had a large number of clangers, and he didn't use the ball very well either. So I think even if you don't put him on your field, he is still someone that you can lock in because he has the role and will have the job security. Luke Pedlar looks very good for Adelaide. He scored 53 in about 53% game time, so that is pretty. So that is a pretty good going for a small forward there. And Matthias Philippou as well looks impressive for St Kilda. He's another one to really keep your eye on.
On the flip side, Toby McLean didn't quite produce the goods we were looking for and hoping for from him. Aside from Radigalia didn't play as well as he did in that first game. Is there concern over some rookies that we'd kind of had locked in the whole way through? Connor McKenna, another one that didn't quite score as much as we'd be hoping for was from someone with his experience. Are any of these guys suddenly on the outer of your side?
Toby McLean was never locked into my side. I said that probably in December or January, he might have been just based on what I knew he could produce. But as the tinkering went on, I didn't see a spot for him anymore, given who was performing and the rumblings coming out of various camps. But I know Lekdog still has him in his team and is still quite a big fan of him.
Yes, I don't. I'm just happy he honestly has gotten through the preseason games. I'm still pretty bullish on him. I still think there's a way for him to score points. If he's not named round one, I'll boot him, obviously. But until then, I'm going to put him in. I'm favouring the guys who have done it before. Asterisk. We'll talk about one player I'm not favouring later on, Patch, that we'll argue about.
Hello.
Guys like Elliot Yeo, guys like Jack Ziebell, guys like Toby McLean, I'm just giving the edge still because they have had proven performances in the past of high fantasy scoring and high fantasy scoring roles. I just feel a little bit more faith in them than like a first year player. And I actually was talking about this earlier with you, Patch, in one of our group chats. It's like that NBA thing where if you give an NBA coach a veteran, he is going to play the veteran over the rookie. It's just what's going to happen. And I still see that with a guy like McLean, Ziebell. I just think their coaches are going to back them in because they know that their floor is probably higher than a rookie's floor. So, yeah, I'm still backing them in. Then again, if he doesn't get named in round one, we'll boot him down to Luke Pedlar or some other spud like that.
Yep, fair enough. So, Damo, what sort of changes did you make to your side over the weekend? Sorry to derail that with a brief bit of rookie chat, but I thought we may as well slide it in there.
I sort of just moved money around a little bit like Lekdog did, and the one thing that really stood out to me was I was overthinking my rucks way too much. Very early on, I had Jared Whitson, Rowan Marshall as my R1, R2. Played around with going for someone cheaper because I didn't think Wits at 605k was a good investment. But after seeing him pump out 165% game time, he's probably going to be better than he was last year, a year removed from his knee injury. And Rowan Marshall showed that he's going to have the monopoly on the St Kilda ruck as well, even though he comes up against Darcy and Jackson in round one by himself. The other move I made was I brought in Finn Callahan and I booted out Nick Dacos in favour of Sam Doherty. Just moved some money around, just brought some players in who I knew could produce and could make me some money.
It's interesting that you've gone and changed the ruck around and looked for someone who you think's really safe. I've done the exact same thing, Tomo. I've gone from Tim English down to Riley O'Brien, which may be the most boring ruck selection you can possibly make at 560k. I just think that he'll get 100 points a week. And honestly, at this point, I've tossed and turned with the rucks. I've looked at Darcy Cameron. I didn't like that. I've looked at Sean Darcy, who looked really good. Slight concern with Luke Jackson there. Slight concern maybe over, he seems to get some niggly injuries. I'm not sure. I've landed on the most boring choice, and that's Riley O'Brien, because I can't see who else is going to guarantee me 100 points every game other than Rowan Marshall.
I just think he's neat.
Where are you at in the rucks, Patch?
I am at the point where I really want Jared Witts, but I can't afford Jared Witts to partner with Rowan Marshall. So I've gone Darcy Cameron at this stage, who I'm hoping to either swing forward, or if that split with Cox eventuates to be detrimental to his scoring, then I'll potentially flick him to Jared Witts after the bye, because Geelong and Gold Coast have the early bye. So at this stage, that's the line I'm looking to upgrade earlier, and then we'll kind of take it from there. I feel like Cameron's a pretty safe choice. I'm not buying into the doom and gloom around Mason Cox playing, and really cutting into his time. I think Cox works better as a ruckman. I don't know if Collingwood's balance works when they've got Cameron and Cox both playing 50-50 in the ruck. I suspect it'll be Dan McStay most of the time, but I still think Cameron's good for 95. He's less than 500k. That's kind of where I've landed at the minute. And then we'll look to upgrade reasonably early on and swing Darcy Cameron forward.
Let's keep talking. Patch, maybe take us through if there's any changes you've made to your side first.
I can't remember what my side looked like before the last week of practice matches, because I just kind of kept tinkering and yeah, just kind of lent in a bit more to the mid-price madness, just because I wanted to see what it looked like, and then I didn't really change it back because it just kind of, I don't know, I thought it was neat. So I bought, my defense kind of moved around a little bit. Mason Redmond went out because what I saw with Andy McGrath in the back line for the Bombers was enough to dissuade me that the Redmond certainly won't improve on last year's output, and I suspect it'll dip a little bit. So as much as he's my favourite player in the competition, I'm probably not going to be on the Red Dog train to start with this season. I moved a few things around to players that had been in my side a few weeks ago, who I'd kind of moved back out and kind of moved around a little bit. Like Finn Callaghan, I'd had quite a while ago and kind of moved him out. Errol Gordon I had very early on, and I'd moved him out, and I've kind of played around to get him back in. Whether or not he stays is debatable. And I also had Liam Jones in my side a few weeks ago, and then nearly got kicked out of the Jockrunners group chat for being like, oh, hey, why is no one talking about Liam Jones? And then everyone shouted at me for 10 minutes straight. And then I took him out, and apparently he can score points.
He has done that in games before. I don't think he's a good selection. I don't know. I'm not the mathematician. Yes, yeah. So 2017 and 2018, he averaged 77.5, 70.5. In 2020, in a shortened quarters or whatever it was, he averaged 72. So he averages around that 65 to 70 mark. I'd say is where you're going to project his average at 228k. Is that enough? I don't see him having a career best year this year. I just don't see it. I don't see him. So let's give him an average of 70, and I think that's being very generous to him, by the way. Is that enough? I'm not a maths man. I don't know the answer. Is that enough?
An average of 70 gives him 150k on his current starting price.
But when does he get the 150k?
It depends it depends what he scores. Does he go 30, then 100, then 70, then 25, then 75, or does he go 60, 80, 70, 60, 80, 70? Because that depends how quickly he makes the money. I see him as this year's version of Paddy McCartan. Not Paddy McCartan came in a little bit cheaper, but I think that they could perform quite similarly and take you through to at least the buys.
Yeah, I'm not expecting Liam Jones to score 101 every week. That would be madness. And even fantasy, his fantasy numbers have traditionally been a lot lower. Still got that to 88 off the back of 17 kicks, 11 marks, a lot of them intercepts. And obviously they're not going to play North Melbourne every week, who, despite not getting a massive number of inside 50s, still, didn't have the best delivery inside 50, which let Jones cut it off. But I think Jones is more likely to be that guy that will take a few more intercept marks. A lot of the other guys have got a more lockdown roles, and the fact that he has that ceiling has increased a little bit, which means he can get on a run of 2 or 3 games where he will score a little bit. That'll bump the price up, and then I can sell him at that stage.
I
I just
just
think his
uh,
best 22. He'll be reasonably consistent. Might not be. I don't know.
I just want to. I don't. I'm not really forming an opinion either way. I'm open to the idea of having him in my team, and I may end up having him in my team. Here in when he last played, which was I believe 2021. Here's how he started the season: 52, 37, 147, 86, 12, 104, and then a bunch of 60s, 20s, 50s. I don't know if that's good or bad for his price point and what that will do to his scoring, but if I have him in my team, I'll feel like I have to have him on field, and if he scores 12 on my field, I'll be even more salty with him than I am in real life.
I look. There's potential for it to backfire. It's not a safe as houses pick, but I feel better about it. Um, Having seen him have that ceiling again.
Mm.
I don't know. What I saw I thought was encouraging. I don't think he's a must have. He's 50K more expensive than you'd ideally want him to be. But I don't know. I think he'll be fine. And similarly, Tom Cole hasn't got a lot of discussion. He's a returning player who would be best 22, will play every week that he's fit. We'll have a few fluctuations in prices if he has to play lockdown or can get up onto a wing. I think he'd be a good pick as well at 180 odd K. So there's every chance I switch to him, but I just like the idea of having one of those rookies alongside, Chinby, Constable, Wilmot, and Cowan if he plays, just knowing that they're going to play every week really makes me feel more comfortable about picking them as opposed to going with a Cowan who might play for 3 weeks and then go back to the VFL to develop a bit more.
Yeah, I guess. Look, honestly, I guess it's the same argument I made about Toby McLean, right? So I totally understand it. Are you like I'm currently running Yo at D2? Are you currently running Yo at D2?
Yo's technically D3, but I've got Will Day at D2, so there's still a little bit of that. Oh, I don't know. Will that go well? There's every chance Day disappears or Yo disappears, and I bring in another rookie.
Yeah.
It just makes me feel more comfortable if I've got like someone who is best 22 at
Yep.
D3, D2. I don't know. That's the main thing that's kind of changed for me, was that I just kind of beefed up that backline rookie situation a little bit more with a Jones in there, and then found space for Callahan to slide back in as well.
All right, Damo, I want to talk to you. I think next week we'll cover about all the must-have rookies and the must-have picks and all that. So let's continue this mid-price conversation, and maybe we'll just run through some popular selections at the moment, and we'll just give a quick overview of how we feel about them. And the one I wanted to start with was Will Day Patch, which you just mentioned, but I'll go to you first, Damo. At 362,000 defensive status, started some centre bounce attendances for Hawthorn. Is he someone that coaches out there should consider, and have you considered?
I'm a big Will Day fan, but I'd like to see it happen in the real thing, not in a preseason game, before I select him. I, I totally get it. He scored 88 in 68% game time, so the points per minute was there in a preseason match. I just want to see it in the real thing before I go after him.
And Patch, obviously, you're sold on him. What are your core reasons why at this stage?
I'm certainly not sold, but he's in there at the minute. There's a lot more tinkering to go under the bridge before we burn it. Um, I just kind of think that there's that role there that he will be playing, in the middle, because they don't have too many other players. He's going to get the crack at centre bounces. It it Touchwood looks like he's got his body right, which we really like to see. Um, from a player. I don't know. I just think he's neat. I like the upside. I'm not expecting. I'm expecting maybe an 80 average. Um, which I don't know. I'm just kind of playing in the space. I don't think he'll hurt you too much, especially considering a lot. We're kind of punting defenders this year. We're pushing them down a little bit and going a little bit cheaper back there, I don't know. I think there's just scope for him to score points and appreciate in value because he's a mature body, and they've got the Cam McKenzie's, Josh Wards, who are, that they'll be good in time, but they still need that. They still need a bit of an older body in the middle as well. So I don't know. That's the basis behind picking him at this stage.
I like it. He's currently in 6% of teams. Mine is not one of them. The next pod I wanted to touch on was Jack Ziebell. I've already mentioned him a little bit, currently in 4.5% of teams. I've got him in there. He was taking kickouts and doing what I need him to do off halfback on the weekend. I think he came away with a score of about 86 points. The ball was down there a lot, as we suspected. I suspect it's going to continue being down there a lot. Part of the thing that interests me, obviously we've seen him score really well in this role before, but also come round 6, he'll be a defensive eligible player, which will give me a little bit more flexibility, particularly going really light in defense. So for me, I've seen enough to select him. Yes, he's still 300 and whatever it is, 356K, which isn't ideal, but he's someone who I've seen do it before. So he's in my team. Do you guys have any thoughts on Jack Ziebell?
He's not someone that I've ruled out. He's just not someone that fits into my team with its current structure. He's probably a safe selection. He's probably going to average 90-ish playing that role, but he's just not someone that's forced his way in yet. And I don't know, maybe it's his age, maybe it's the new coach, maybe it's a new system, maybe it's something along those lines that's kind of making me wary of him, but he's not someone that has leapt out of the paintwork and has told me to select him.
Patch, you got any comments or?
Just a little bit of concern about when Aaron Hall does come back, even if it's only for a month. That still dents his scoring, I think, as we saw the year he did play really well down back. Hall coming into the side did hurt his scoring a bit. I think they're also going to try and share it around a little bit in terms of he won't have the monopoly on the kickouts, and they'll start using your Josh Goders, even your Griffin Logue might get a bit more. Bailey Scott has kind of come on a little bit. I think some of the natural development from those younger kids it won't take much off Ziebell, but it's kind of enough that I'm like, I don't know. And then as Damo said, you're picking him then ahead of Fife, potentially ahead of Goulden, ahead of like a Tanner Bruhn, ahead of a bunch of other players that have probably just got a little bit in front of him. So I just kind of, at this stage, he's not on my list. And, I'd then have the question of, is he a stepping stone or a keeper, because he's just that little bit more expensive than you'd like for a stepping stone. I think, and I just don't think he'll be in the top 10 of either the defenders or the forwards or even really the top 15. So he's just kind of two in the middle in a bunch of categories to really pique my interest.
See, I'm the other way. I think he will have monopoly. I don't think they'll share it around. And you know why? Because I saw Clarko give Ben Stratton games week after week, year after year, because he likes having mature heads and leaders, and like Ziebell could be he could have one kick a game, and I'm telling you, Clarko's still playing him. So I'm not too stressed about Clarko's going to find reasons to get the ball into his hand to keep him in that team.
Yes, but at one point Ben Stratton was so cheap we were considering him as a rookie option.
Oh yeah, Ben Stratton's key Supercoach stat was pinching blokes. Like, I'm not saying at least Jack Ziebell can kick the ball. Stratton, admittedly, he was captain at the time, so it was a bit hard to drop him. And I assume I meant to mention this guy before, Ben Cunnington. None of us are on him, right?
I'm more interested in Cunnington than I am in Ziebell, but I'm not very interested in Ziebell. I think Cunnington will average 80 or 85, and that's fine. But he's just too expensive compared to the other options.
As we scroll down the list of mid-price, I'm just trying to find players that are in lots of teams. Jason Horne-Francis is in 14% of teams. Is anyone buying the hype of the Formula One ice bathing number one pick, Jason Horne-Francis?
No.
Very good. Will Setterfield. I have this horrendous feeling that if I pick him, he will average 2 kicks a game. And if I don't pick him, he will be the best mid-pricer of the year. Was very good on the weekend for your boys doing, guess what? his natural role. He's not a winger. Patch, you're going to have to speak to this guy.
There's a role for him. They've recruited him with an eye on, getting a bigger body in the midfield, which have been sorely lacking. He's a bigger body midfielder. They're giving him first crack, and looks like he's actually going to score. He plays a Supercoach friendly game, contested possessions. Will feed it out to your merits, and your other. I assume we have other footballers somewhere in the team that aren't named Zach Merritt or Mason Redmond. I know he's not someone I've really considered because I normally just don't consider Essendon players. They already let me down enough each weekend that I don't want to go back a second time for more disappointment. But I don't know. There's the role there. There's the scoring potential is there. I think he's someone I will corrective trade into if need be, because I don't know. Based on what we saw, there's a lot of potential there, and you'd put him ahead of most other players in that price bracket, be it a Worpel, a Hopper, or whatever, because I think there's, I don't know, maybe the ceiling's a bit higher than a Hopper, but he might be less consistent. I don't know. I really don't know.
Damo, he had 25 touches. He had, 6 tackles? 6 tackles. He was playing inside mid. He's got 119 Supercoach points. You got any thoughts on him?
I've seen people opt for Setterfield instead of Hopper, and I've seen people, when they're doing a coin flip on a 50-50, say that they are going for Hopper because he's in more teams and appears to be the safer selection, because if it doesn't work, there's a lot of teams that'll have to deal with it. I'm still not sure either way. I don't think I was sold on Hopper to begin with, and I saw nothing in the game on the weekend to sell me on Hopper, and I'm not sold on Setterfield, and I saw nothing in this game to sell me on Setterfield either.
Sorry, just a live update quickly. I've just swapped Hopper for Setterfield.
Setterfield, he's never done it before. In the shortened season, he averaged 89.7, which was really good. 62, 58, 60, and 45 were his other averages across his career in no particular order. Don't know why I did it in that order. He hasn't done it before. There was a period where Carlton fans were like, "This guy's the next Cooter," and maybe he is, maybe he was. It's a tough one. He's had from what we've seen in 2023, he should be a lock in everyone's team. But I can't help but look at that history, or the lack thereof, of Premier fantasy output. Even when Carlton were terrible and couldn't find a midfielder to play. In fact, we lost a game to GWS where they only had 16 players on field once. Like, that's how bad we were, and we still couldn't find a way to make Will Setterfield score well. But that's my biggest concern.
To play
that the history, which is like a J.R. Tolkien novel, versus my notepad over here, which is the 2023 form.
I mean, to play devil's avocado, Carlton still didn't give him the role, even when there was no one around. The team was terrible. Like, they still didn't put him in the inside. They still were like, "No, you're a winger. Play on the wing." So that's changed, I think. But expect him to average 110 is nonsense and fantasy, and it won't happen. But I don't know. I to be honest with you, didn't realize he'd scored 119. And
just to finish what I was saying, the reason I'm going for Hopper over Setterfield is because Hopper has done it before. If Setterfield was dual position, had forward eligibility or defense eligibility, then maybe I might favour him over a Hopper. But I'm going with Hopper over Setterfield because Hopper's done it before. Setterfield might impress me early on and make some corrective trades to him, but like you said, he hasn't done it before. Will he do it consistently now?
That will be something I ponder over the next 10 days. Elliot Yeo's in 50% of teams, gentlemen. He's in my team. I assume he's in both of your teams. He wasn't amazing. Damo, you watched the West Coast game. He wasn't amazing.
He kind of went in second gear. And if we remember 12 months ago, when West Coast played their preseason match, they had about 6 injuries. Probably about 5 of them were season ending. One of them, and Yo was still coming back from that groin injury where he barely had a preseason. So he was in and out of the team. He was aggravating it. He really wasn't fit. But he's had a full preseason. It looks like his power's back. When he was around the ball, he actually did some pretty good things with it, but he wasn't running from contest to contest. He wasn't, exerting himself to be a part of this preseason match and to change the way the preseason match was flowing. But I think that will change when the season begins, and I think that he's a safer selection. His teammate Dom Sheed, though, looked completely lost, and I
Yeah.
don't think that he's a selection that we can rely on now.
He came out of my side. I was hoping his consistent averaging of 80 in the past would get him through, but you're right, he just didn't look good. Patch, any thoughts on Yo or Dom Sheed?
Nothing different to what you two beautiful humans have just said.
And the hot man, we've already touched on him, Jacob Hopper. I mean, again, I'm not in love with the selection. I'm a bit like you, Damo. I'm not in love with the selection. At no point have I been in love with the selection, but he's in 46% of teams. And he still, I don't really know how, but he still managed to come out and score 93 points. So in the preseason game, and I think he's just going to do it. I think he's just going to get like 90 points every week. And I don't necessarily feel great about selecting him, but I think to go against the grain on this one is going to be potentially painful.
Or it could be like the thing that sets you apart for 2 weeks before everyone switches from Hopper to Setterfield or to Worpel or to whoever it is that does break out. He feels like such a it's a safe selection, which like if you want to feel warm and comfortable and safe and wrapped up in a nice little blanket, then yeah, he's the guy for you. But also like, oh, it's so boring. I haven't wanted to pick him all preseason, and I don't want to pick him now. And he's gonna be good. He'll be fine. He'll do the thing we expected him to do based on what we saw. But oh, come on, like live a little. I don't know.
Damo, is having 90 points on field a good thing?
Yeah, and if we can rely on it, and if we can rely on it every single week, then it's he kind of puts himself in your team a little bit.
Yeah, I think he's one we just need to pick. And if we really think Will Setterfield in the first 2 weeks is going to outscore him by enough points for it to truly matter, then go with Will Setterfield. But personally, I'm happy to go Hopper and go, you know what? Will, I throw the gauntlet down. Outscore Jacob Hopper in the first 2 weeks.
You're both a boring bunch of biddies. There, I said it.
I'll tell you,
Nat 5.
I'll tell you, tell you mid-pricer, and you just mentioned his name. After seeing Nat Fife live on Thursday night, I'm finding it hard to justify not picking him now. We've all seen what he can do at a centre bounce. He rips the ball out. He charges forward. He's very good in the contested situations. Against Port Adelaide, the ball only had to sniff the forward line for him to be near it. So I still think that he's going to be a pretty good forward, and it wouldn't surprise me if he ends up being a top 6 to 8 forward for the year.
That's a big call.
15 disposals, 6 marks, and 3 goals. Is he going to have to rely on goal scoring to score these points, Damo?
As all forwards, probably, but I also don't think that he will be getting 15 disposals every week either. I think there'll be some weeks where he gets 20 to 25 without scoring, and that makes up for his lack of scores. And then there'll be some games where he has about 8 and kicks 4, and that makes up for his lack of disposals. I think there'll be a balancing act with his scoring and how he gets his scoring. And I think a low 90 to 95 average is probably a pretty good estimate for him, and he only has to average 84 to make 150k in his price as well.
Just remind me quickly, because I've already forgotten. Is 90 odd points on field each week good?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Yeah, look, he did look really good. But my counteraction is like, oh, it's boring. It's Nat 5. Everyone's going to pick Nat 5. God, it's dull.
Yeah, he's
but-
not in my current team. He's not in my current team.
No, well,
Jack Ziebell's in my current team.
the guy I've
And
got ahead of him, I want to talk about next. If I can segue yet, or are you going to say
go
something?
on, segue away.
Tanner Bruhn. It looks like he's going to play as a full-time midfielder, apparently, which none of us really saw coming. We talked about him a little bit on the mailbag last week, and then he kind of came out after blitzing the first unofficial preseason game that we didn't have stats for. And then, in the game against Brisbane, he came out, and can you tell I'm padding as I try and find the stat?
Do you want me to tell you the stats?
Yeah, what number did he get?
He had 112 points for 19 disposals and 7 tackles.
Yeah, 11 contested possessions. No marks, which is interesting, but that's number wang, baby. That's Jenga. Discuss. I don't know how to feel about this. I didn't see the game. I've just seen that he's been good. Foz, who has his eye across all things Geelong, says that no, actually he's going to play more mid than we expected.
I'm not going to pick a Geelong player.
Yeah, I don't trust Chris Scott. And Patch, I'm surprised you're so engrossed in Tanner Bruhn after calling Hopper and Fife boring. I think Tanner Bruin's the boring pick.
Oh, I mean, Bruin's in 9% of teams, and Fife and Hopper are both in 40-something%. So, I'm interested as to how you've come to that conclusion. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just intrigued as to what basis that Bruin is the boring option.
I don't mean boring as in like he's in everyone's team. I mean boring as in like, is he actually going to do it? Like, does Chris Scott leave him in that position every single week? And do we trust that team to be the same every single week, especially with the void of Joel Selwood? How are they going to cover that, and how long will they experiment covering that?
I mean, if anything, that makes him more exciting, makes him a worse pick, like a far worse pick. But I see what you mean. It's a valid concern, and it's one that I'm toying with. He's not set in stone, but at the moment he's sitting there, and the idea of someone that can play in the guts and average 100, and I just feel more safe picking somebody that's going to play in the midfield each week, which on all the current evidence looks like he will, as opposed to a Nat Fife who, even if Freo win by 100 points, there's every chance he just doesn't get his hands on the ball, and he's like a decoy forward that takes a really good defender away from Luke Jackson, Matt Taberner, etc. I don't know. I just feel slightly more comfortable in that. I don't know. It's all vibes at the minute, and the vibes are all being a bit different and jagging when everyone's zigging. That's not how the metaphor worked.
Yeah, I'm not picking a Geelong player. But you know who I probably will pick and will definitely burn me? James Worpel.
Oh, Lekdog.
I'm a big Warp man.
I know.
I'm all in on him. I think I've got him in every single keeper league I'm in, except maybe one with you, Patch. I've been investing for years. It's like crypto. It'll come around again. I'm telling you. He was very good. He was very, very good. His disposal looked actually okay against Collingwood. There was still some very hairy moments, but there was a blind turn through the middle of the ground. He had 101 from 67% game time. He had 30 disposals. Mate, he was inside mid. He was Tom Mitchell 2.0. And I loved every bloody second of it.
So 101 from 67% time on ground, 624 meters gained. But when he had the ball, but without the ball, he didn't do much.
He doesn't do anything when the ball's not in his hand.
Hey,
I don't know. I just think at 309k, I know he's going to burn me. I know he's going to burn me. It's just a matter of when, and I'm so excited to find out when.
Look, as long as you're having fun, sweetie, then that's all that matters.
All right. Well, James Worpel, he in my bloody team.
I respect the commitment. I respect all of the stonks you've been building for years, and I will be here for you when it all comes crashing down.
Oh, it's going to be crashing down. I'm scrolling through this list of mid-prices, trying to find some more that are sort of relevant of conversation. I reckon there might be a GWS player we need to discuss.
Yeah, Finn Callahan was quite good on the weekend. 244k, so a bit cheaper than all of these other options we've been talking about. Is now up to 14.1% of teams after being at about 4% before the practice game. He was in my team a little while ago, and I kind of moved stuff around to bring him back in. So I've now got Hopper and, well, now Setterfield and Callahan. And I don't know. I just think he'll be reasonably consistent. He's not going to average 110, obviously. Coming off the wing a fair bit, I think he'll see a bit of the ball. They really rate him. They really like him. He's just signed a massive extension, which, I don't know, makes me feel better about picking him as confirmation bias. And I'm going to ride that confirmation bias all the way to the bank. But yeah, you get rid of him at the bias. He's not a keeper. He's going to fade, but I think he'll be quite good.
Damo, can you pick Finn Callahan and Sam Flanders?
No, it's one or the other. And I was talking to Tim Mitchell about this, and I said the Giants probably had a fairly full strength team, whereas Gold Coast were missing Took Miller. And so who comes out of that center bounce mix and takes Sam Flanders' role? Or where does Sam Flanders go once that player moves into Sam Flanders' role? So I think Finn Callahan is safer than Sam Flanders.
Sam Flanders is going to play in a forward pocket. I'm telling you now. I am telling you now. I want every single person out there listening who is going to compete with me to pick Sam Flanders, because he is going to be terrible. I've said it once. I've said it twice. I've said it 1,000 times. Draft doctors, I'm coming for you. I'm coming for you, because Sam Flanders is garbage, and this was a garbage performance. Even though he had 30 disposals, it was very good.
Garbage, you reckon? Wow,
He's garbage.
Wow,
he's no Finn Callahan. He wishes he was Finn Callahan.
He's not fit to sniff Finn Callahan's farts. I'm with you. I don't think he'll be anywhere near it. I think he'll play more of a half forward. I think he'll be up the ground a little bit with bursts. But
I actually have nothing against him. I actually think he could be a good midfielder. I just don't think he's going to be a midfielder.
Yeah, he won't get the role. It looks like they're quite liking Alex Davies in there as well, and it's just they've got too many mouths to feed. I don't see it.
All right, gentlemen, if you've got any other players to discuss, now's the time. I want to throw one last question at you before we wrap up, if you have no one else to discuss.
I quite like Jaden Hunt. I'm not going to pick him. I don't think anyone should pick him. I just think he's neat. And, full credit to the 1.6% of teams that do have him. Yeah, I don't know. I think he's got a role there. It'll be kind of nice. He'll make a bunch of cash. Won't be better than most other options. And Nick Martin is also kind of interesting, although won't score enough points to make him worth it over all of the people we've spoken about already.
All right, in your current team, gentlemen, this is a 3-part question for each of you. Who is someone that locked themselves into your team further that was already in there? Who is someone that you've added that you didn't have in your team? And who is someone that everyone is jumping on and you are fading? I'll go first to give you a moment to think about it. Bailey Dale was in my side as my D1. He remains in my side as my D1. I liked his game. Dylan Moore comes back into my team after his massive 70 points off like 40% game time or whatever it actually was. He looked really good, and maybe him coming out of the game boosted Worpel a bit. I don't know, but Moore looked good, came into my side. And the player that I have not jumped on, and everyone else is jumping on, is Errol Gordon, and I've got nothing against him, and I think he's an awesome pick. I just don't think I can pick him over a Dunkley, a Moore, a Rosie, a Taranto. I just don't think he is going to be as consistent as the 4 I've mentioned there.
No, I think that's very fair. Can we briefly chat about Errol Gordon as somebody that kind of slides towards the top end of that mid-price scale? Obviously, he scored what was apparently the biggest score ever in a preseason game.
It wasn't the biggest ever, but it was close.
It was close. My apologies, but he...
he might have got scaled up.
I don't know, 188 is a big number, and
it is.
There's certainly no suggestion he'll do that every week, but the ceiling is there, and I wasn't able to watch the game, but when people say it was Petrarca-like, that's kind of, that perks the ears up. Do we think he is somebody that He certainly could be a top 10 forward. Will
Oh
he
yeah.
be a top 10 forward this year?
The question is for me, is he going to be better than Dunkley, Moore, Rosie, Taranto, etc.? Because guys like, we might see Bontempelli get forward status again. We might see Max Gawn, who kicked 3 goals on the weekend, get forward status. So I think he could be a top 10 right now, based on the forwards that we have. Yeah, for sure. Top 10 forward. Will he end there? Not 100% sure. Will he run out this full season? I think he's a really good player and he's one that's tempted me, but I don't know. And maybe I'm biased because Paddy Dow was tagging him in quotation marks and he got 45 disposals. But yeah, I'm not saying he's a bad selection. I'm just saying I can't justify him over those 4 big forwards at this stage.
Damo, what are your thoughts?
I like him, but for all the reasons that Lekdog hasn't got him is probably why I haven't got him. I just don't see him outperforming those top 4 or 5 forwards that most people have in their teams.
And you could go 5-6 deep and have him on field and be really happy, but I just think more options may present themselves as the season progresses. So, Patch, we'll go to you first. Someone further locked into your team, someone you added to your team, and someone that you're fading.
Well, the player I added was actually Errol Gordon. I briefly mentioned it before. I don't know, I like the upside. He's a bit cheaper than the other ones, which I think kind of helps especially if you're trying to wrangle a rookie up a little bit.
It gives you 50k on a more.
Yeah, which is potentially quite big, and potentially is the difference between a Will Phillips or a Chincotta, which it's bad example, but it gives you a bit more flexibility in some of those rookie prices. I think the upside is really there. Will he stay there? I don't know, because there's every risk that he gets pushed out of the midfield when Mills is back. There's every risk that that he's the player they look to tag because it's kind of that sort of a little bit more outside, which makes him easy to tag than a Callum Mills or a James Rowbottom or whatever. So I don't know. He's in at the moment. He could be back out very easily. The player that has been completely locked in since day dot and will never be moving is Tom Green. Scored 130 on the weekend. That is his midfield now. He is the number 1 extractor, the number 1 guy in there. And I there's not a world in which I'm not picking Tom Green. I think this is the year he goes 115 the whole way through.
I don't have him. I haven't had him. There's a real chance that I could go a steal or even potentially, and this god, fantasy gods, I'm sorry, a Clayton Oliver down to a Tom Green before the season starts. There's a very real chance of that happening.
Damo, do you have Green?
I have Green. He's been locked into my team since the very beginning.
This is going to be the zag that I just get stuck on, and is just awful, isn't it? I just don't know why I don't want him, but I just can't. I just haven't done it. I just haven't done it.
You're just being stubborn.
I think it's the GWS thing.
Yeah, I've been burnt by a lot of GWS players. Maybe I'll add him in.
I mean, haven't we all, really?
Who are you fading, Patch?
At this stage, I'm fading Ridley based on structure. A lot of people jumped on the weekend after he's 128. Looks like he'll be good, but again, I'm just worried that one injury to a Zerk Thatcher, a Laverde, one of those key pillars down back means that he has to play lockdown, and we've seen that when he plays lockdown, he's all right for Essendon. He's not good for Supercoach scoring. I'm a little bit worried there. I can't fit him in as well. He's currently one of the guys I'm fading, without having a chance to have a look at too many others that are jumping out.
Damo, how about you? Player you locked, a player you added, and a player you have faded.
The player that I locked in is Tim Taranto. I think his performance just showed how deeply entrenched he will be in that Richmond system. The player that I added was Jared Witts. He was already in a version of my plans. I just needed to see how he went in a preseason game, and I saw enough to not be silly with my ruck line and just pair him with Marshall. The player that I am fading, and there's lots of people jumping on him. Not as many as you think, but there is a popular group. There is a popular movement towards him. Is Nazaya Wanganeen Malera. I just I don't see him maintaining what he did in the preseason match for the entire season.
I think inconsistency might be a feature in his game this year in terms of scoring, which is, I mean, that's the risk with all these mid-prices, isn't it? But again, we spoke about it before. I'm backing in the guys that have done it before rather than the guys who we hope are going to do it.
And I think with Wangane Malera, I think a lot of people are overlooking the fact that Hill was missing. Brad Hill wasn't playing. He was loping off halfback, which, he won't be doing as much if Bradley Hill's in the side. I'm not sure why people would be jumping on a 300k midfielder like Malera, who's very outside. I don't see it.
Very good, gentlemen. Well, I reckon that can probably wrap us up for today. Thank you for joining me. This episode, you guys don't know this episode was brought to us by Supercoach. So you'll hear a short message after this. Make sure you sign up if you haven't. Make sure you add me as an expert if you want some free wins, and join the Jock Reynolds Supercoach group, which I probably should have looked at the code before I started speaking.
990360.
990360. Thank you, Damo. Compete in there. The top scorer will take home a custom Jock Reynolds ring, courtesy of SC Rings _ on Twitter or supercoachchampion.com. There's going to be a hell of a lot of content on the platform over the next 2 weeks. So lock in, strap in, send your questions in for the mailbag. Hashtag, what is it? Hashtag Jock Mailbag.
Hashtag Jock Mailbag. This week's episode is actually going to be out on March 12th, and then we will revert to our Wednesday time slot heading into round 2.
Bloody beautiful. All right, gentlemen, I bloody love you. Let's get through this next 10 days.
Godspeed.
Take your love of footy to the next level with KFC Supercoach AFL, Australia's best fantasy footy game.